Isn't this nice? So we smoked out Winnie Brinks. So I said, I've known where Winnie Brinks is, but I don't leak the private conversations because, as you know, we talk. And now the media thinks that I don't talk to Winnie Brinks, but I do. And so she's here. She surfaced. We're very excited. that our Senate partners are back in town finally. And you know, the House committees have been meeting the whole time. I mean, we had a committee meeting yesterday. We had committee meetings last week before, so a lot of meetings. So the House has been pretty active. It's good to have the Senate back. And I think it's a great thing. You know, Brinks and the Senate Democrats are caving, and they're finally running some of the House's bills. And we've passed so many bills. I think it's probably 150 bills. It's been a lot of bills that have passed the House. But yet we only have 6 public acts, the lowest in the history of Michigan. So it's good that the Senate is finally cracking and the Democrats are finally moving bills. Now, some of these bills are a little minor, right? I mean, we saw the highway naming bills. They've sat on these bills for months and months and months. We see these important bills on deep fakes and things that went through. So that's good to see that they're acting on those. Democrats have been sitting on those for many months. We saw a Pauline Wenzel bill move through, so that was a positive thing. They've been sitting on that a long time. So they're starting to do things. I will say that I wish they would have acted today on the House's government shutdown prevention plan. We passed that bill in February and sent it over there to prevent a government shutdown and to ensure that our local prisons stay open, that our local governments have the safety they need and the funding they need. We wanted to ensure that kids were not pawns in the Democrats' shutdown game. As you know, we passed a school aid budget before July 1 that really would put record funding into schools and record flexibility for those districts. We trust those districts to take the money and to know what to do with it. And most of them will spend it on free lunch and free breakfast and things like that. They're going to have more money than they've ever had before under the Republican plans to do not just free breakfast and lunch, but more than they've ever done before. It's a record amount of money, and it's also a record amount of flexibility from the House Republicans. And what we're doing in that budget is we're empowering our local school districts so they make the decisions on how to best spend the money. I'll just give you an example. So let's say we tell them they have $100 that they must spend on busing, but they can do it for $80. They lose the other $20. So if you can give them the flexibility, they can get the full value out of that $100. They can spend the $80 on the busing, and then they can put the other $20 into whether that's more money for the teachers or in the classroom or whatever it is. And you know, I use a small dollar amount to make it simple, but I'm just explaining, giving them the flexibility doesn't mean those services are going away. It actually encourages them to get better value for their dollar out of those services, so then they have the flexibility to spend it on other things that they find valuable. That's why giving them the flexibility is more important than creating regulations and restricting what our local schools can spend their money on. That is a bad idea, and that's the Democrat idea. Really what the Democrats want in this budget is a status quo. The Democrats think that Michigan has been on the right track in education under Governor Whitmer. And so rather than make some changes that are going to help us improve our reading scores, improve our math scores, Democrats just want to tack on 4% on top of what we did last year and continue on the path we're on. In fact, Democrats, every single Democrat in the House voted last week for kids to have cell phones in the classrooms. We had a bill Governor Whitmer called for in the state of the state to ban cell phones in the classroom. Every Democrat voted to block that. And so as a result of that, kids, as we start school in just a week or more, are going to have their cell phones. They're going to be distracted, and that's not a good thing for education. And it's really a shame that Democrat legislators are putting politics, trying to embarrass their political opponents, stick it to Republicans, and the victim are kids and their education when they're distracted in the classroom. It's a sad thing that Democrats have done. But just going through today, I really think with the government shutdown prevention plan that the House passed in February or March, we could ensure right now that our local governments, our jails, our state police, on and on and on, parks are not pawns in a political shutdown game. And the Democrats could have voted that today and sent it to the governor, and we wouldn't have to worry about a government shutdown. But it's better, they think it's better politically to not act and just blame because that is their negative governing philosophy. They're very lucky that they have a minority party in the Senate of Republicans that have a positive governing philosophy who actually helped them today and looked at their bills and said, you know what, highway naming bills, these deep fake bills, you know, Pauline Wenzel's regulatory change on liquor bills, we'll help you get these done today. That you didn't see the Senate Republicans saying, let's leverage the Democrats and block everything they do to try to embarrass them. So, you know, it's very interesting. I think Ranji Puri could learn a lot from Eric Nesbitt, much smarter, and actually is for some things, unlike Puri, who has a very negative governing philosophy. I would just say, you know, it sure would have been smart politically for Democrats to vote yes on the cell phone bill to help us stop kids from being distracted in the classroom. And also, Democrats will really regret their vote. They thought they were getting one over on me, but they're really going to regret their vote. That's going to result in violent criminals being let out on the streets early, very soon, because of Democrat prosecutors not having enough time to file to keep them in prison. Democrats voted to allow violent criminals to get out of jail early. And I'm telling you, the public is not going to like that once they start seeing these violent criminals back in their communities directly because of House Democrats. People like Menser and Mai Zong and Reggie Miller. It's amazing to see. So moving ahead, I'll just say we're getting much closer on the bills that we're introducing, these perfect budgets that are coming very soon from the House. In fact, Ann Bolin and I were going over some more details today, and these budgets are going to be very good. So I think the other thing that the Senate should have done is they should have shown us their roads plan today. What a great opportunity to do that. I saw Governor Whitmer once again reaffirm there will not be a budget without a roads plan. That's an area where her and I agree quite a bit. So the problem we have, and I'm hearing more and more Democrats talk about this. I was over in Metro Detroit this week, and what I'm hearing from these Democrat leaders is we want the Senate Democrats to put up a roads plan. In these Democrat counties and cities, they're saying, look, we have a crisis coming on our roads and our bridges, and we need the funding. Where is the Democrat roads plan? We have been waiting for 7 months. Today would have been a great day to introduce it. Unfortunately, we did not see that. All we see are hearings lying about President Trump and criticizing President Trump and fear-mongering about work requirements in Medicaid. So, you know, it's great that the Democrats are back. We're looking for their roads plan. They should pass the government shutdown prevention plan. And then we're going to get to work very soon on the rest of the budget. But why should we, because and I heard that the Democrats were talking about a government shutdown today. But remember, the Democrats especially the Senate Democrats and Mallory McMorrow, have been talking about a government shutdown since before the election. They've been setting up this government shutdown because the Democrats think it helps them politically, just like they think it helped them politically to block us from banning cell phones in the classroom. This is all about politics for the Democrats, and they believe politics is more important than the people who are affected by these decisions, and we saw that with their votes last week. So as we move ahead, we're going to have a great budget. Republicans are going to lead the way, and I believe in the end, I have confidence in Governor Whitmer that she will get these legislative Democrats in line who are really rebelling against her. I mean, you look at the Democrats are voting to subpoena and force Whitmer administration officials to come before the legislature. The Democrats are voting to tank Governor Whitmer's highest priorities as stated in the state of the state. And ultimately, Democrats are refusing to put forward a plan to fix our roads, despite the fact that Governor Whitmer has said any budget must contain a roads plan. So I have confidence in Governor Whitmer, though, that she will corral these Democrats and get them to work with us, and we'll get a budget done. And I'm looking forward to September 30th, standing next to Governor Whitmer, celebrating a state budget that is lower than it was last year, spends less money than last year, brings the state workers back to work, ensures that there is no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, funds our roads, especially our local roads, without raising taxes. There is so much we can do. We can make record investments in education, and we can ensure that we have a public safety trust fund that ensures that all of these Democrat counties and cities have the additional funding needed to fight violent crime. So I'm looking forward to doing that alongside Governor Whitmer. And it'll be interesting to see Winnie Brinks and her transformation as we get there. So Kyle, go ahead.
So if state government shuts down, do you believe lawmakers and staff should be paid?
Well, I talked about this a little bit when I endorsed Mayor Duggan's idea. So Mayor Duggan came out and said if the politicians do not meet the deadline, that their pay should be withheld. And I agree with Mayor Duggan on that. And the reason is because I know firsthand, if that were the case, I would have got a deal done by July 1. The problem is that Democrats in the Senate didn't feel that skin in the game and that urgency, and so that gave them the opportunity to use politics and put that ahead of what we needed to do, was get a budget done by July 1. And you saw them leave and walk away on the school budget that we were trying to do. And we tried in good faith to put together a deal to force them back to the table, but House Democrats decided to put politics ahead of the kids. And now you're seeing, because of the Democrats leaving those negotiations, you see some school districts like in Okemos where, they're putting out letters talking about uncertainty in state funding, right? And so I would just say that never would have happened if Democrats would have stayed at the table on school budget July 1. And Mayor Duggan's idea to force the politicians' pay to be tied to that performance would have gotten the job done. And so I endorse his idea, and I really think the politicians' pay should be tied to them getting the budget done on time. That would have given me the leverage I needed to get a deal done. But Democrats instead, there's no consequence to Democrat politicians. They get to blame Republicans, and they get their summer off. And they didn't have to compromise in any way. And the way that Democrats here in Lansing are, that's a win for them. What were you going to say, Kyle?
What about legislative staff? Should they be paid if their government is technically without a budget?
We'll have to look at all the details on that. I just have so far considered what Mayor Duggan said, and I agree with him on that. Yeah, Beth?
When you were detailing what you'd like to see in the budget just now, you didn't mention an income tax cut. Did you abandon that idea? Or?
So I've looked at, and I mentioned this to you, Beth, one of the things that's really important as we're going through this process is putting together a budget that balances. And as everyone here hopefully knows, and hopefully will admit, I'm hoping all of the media will admit this because it is a truth, the Democrat Senate budget is billions of dollars out of balance from what the current numbers are. That's just a fact, okay? They're relying on January numbers that are not accurate. And I saw today they're having a hearing talking about how the One Big Beautiful Bill changes the budget, okay? So they're saying that, but yet they want you to believe that it's the same position to have a very outdated, unbalanced budget that spends billions more than we have, that they're saying that's the same as our position, which is we're going to have a balanced budget based on the real numbers. That is not the same. I've told the media, maybe I'll do a $500 billion budget, and I can pay for everything, and I'll bring that to the negotiations. And what maybe even the media would say, you know, you can't do that, that we don't have $500 billion. Well, that is what they're doing by spending more money than we have, by billions. That is what they're doing by not putting in their budget a roads plan that funds it. They just say we're fixing the roads, but they don't put the $3 billion in there. We see them doing this over and over, spending more money than we have and wanting to make the cuts in secret rather than show us the math up front. So when I've looked at the issues that are facing us right now with the budget, my position is that we should magnify the cuts, the tax cuts in the One Big Beautiful Bill. Meaning the One Big Beautiful Bill presents an opportunity to eliminate tax on Social Security, tax on overtime, tax on tips. What I see ahead of us is a state budget that where the current law is in place, you have the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security at the federal level, and you're still going to pay that tax at the state level. So given that, what I've decided to do is to prioritize amplifying the tax cuts in the One Big Beautiful Bill. And for that reason, I'm not recommending in our budget that we put the full income tax repeal. So you might remember Democrats raised the income tax last year. And we were the only state in the country that had their income tax go up. What I'm focusing now, the recommendations I'm making, is let's ensure that we amplify the One Big Beautiful Bill tax cuts. The tax cut on Social Security, the tax cut on overtime, and the tax on Social Security, overtime, and tips. So we're saying we don't want people, workers that are tip employees, to pay a higher tax. We don't want people on their overtime or their Social Security. That's where we're going to focus. And I think that is really what you see when you have the opportunity to do a real budget, which is what we're doing based on the real numbers and based on the One Big Beautiful Bill. I think people in Michigan would be mad if they thought they had no tax on tips and then they still have a state tax on tips. They still have a state tax on overtime. I think it'd be a problem. That's why we're going to amplify it and help President Trump amplify the effects of the One Big Beautiful Bill.
Do you know how much tax revenue that will bring?
I think it's about $150 million, and then it goes up to about $180 million as you look at the 3 years.
So not 700 million would be.
Right. Yep. But I think realistically we're going to get this done. I think it's something in divided government we can get done. And one thing is I've approached this budget, which we are calling the perfect budget. I think as we go through it, right, we're trying to be realistic. What Democrats did with their budget, which spends billions more than we have, is they tried to satisfy everyone. They tried to make everyone happy. They put things in there that they don't have any intention of really doing. Some people call that a performance budget, and those people that are watching, they know who they are. But I'll say, if you use a performance budget, like the Democrats, that's not a real negotiating position. When we're looking at the budget and we're saying, look, we're going to focus on the no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, which has more like $150 million effect, right? We're putting forward a real budget. This isn't a performance budget. And that's what I've been trying to convey this whole time, is you can use the real numbers and you can actually put forward a budget that reflects the realities we have, and you can show what your priorities are transparently. But Democrats won't do that. They want to please everybody and then make those decisions in the back room. And you all have written many stories about what happens when we make those decisions in the back room. You know, when we put forward in our budget a clear list of what earmarks we're seeking and who the sponsor is, based on public hearings and based on disclosure months ago. You know, that's a much better position than the position of Sarah Anthony, which is we're going to disclose after we vote. What good does that do? It does no good at all. What were you going to say over here?
You keep talking about the real numbers. Are you saying that we need to have another consensus revenue estimating conference to get those numbers, or where would they come from?
Well, the real numbers are based on the May Revenue Estimating Conference and then the recent House Fiscal Memo. And you saw the recent House Fiscal Memo, which details the effects of the One Big Beautiful Bill. So those are the real numbers. The January numbers are not the real numbers because they changed the estimate to 3% growth instead of 4% growth. And also because the One Big Beautiful Bill put some tax cuts in place that are going to really spur economic growth, both in research and development and also in manufacturing. So big growth coming. Now, when they do the estimates, they only talk about, we're going to have a little less money because of the tax cuts, but you still have to account for that. And so we're being transparent. And I really think the media should write positive editorials about this level of transparency. Because, I mean, how cool would it be to know what they're actually advocating for, rather than they go in the secret room and then they say, okay, we did our performance budget, now let's do our real budget, right? That's the difference. We're bringing real transparency. Some people think this should be part of HEAT 2, but we haven't developed HEAT 2 enough yet. But there will be a HEAT 2, by the way, Beth, so look forward to that. Yeah, right here. How are you doing? Hey, great article. He wrote a great article about my statement on property tax, so great job you're doing. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Dan Russell's comments that the state should pause funding the EDC?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, isn't it? And this is a great example of the fracture in the Democrat Party. And we really see this at the national level, too. You know, there is no leader of the Democrat Party. Many Democrats are still in denial about the fact that Trump won and we flipped the Michigan House. Some Democrats are in denial about the fact that I'm the Speaker of the House, right? These are a very, they're a very depressed group of people. And that might be where their negative governing philosophy comes from, is they don't understand the realities, right? I give Governor Whitmer credit. Governor Whitmer has recognized that Donald Trump won the election and there's a Republican House in Michigan. And what she's done is she's moved more to the middle, okay? Now you're seeing the Attorney General investigating the MEDC. You're seeing the Attorney General call for ending funding for the MEDC. Did Dana Nessel ever investigate Gretchen Whitmer before she started embracing Donald Trump? The answer is no, okay? Were there things that Gretchen Whitmer did before Donald Trump won in 2024 that should have been investigated? The answer is yes, okay? So I think Jay DeBoyer is doing a great job of pointing out the political hypocrisy in the Attorney General's office. And many Democrats voted to subpoena Dana Nessel to produce information related to the fact that if it's a Republican organization, she'll prosecute. If it's a Democrat organization with ties to her, it just sits on her desk and nothing happens. So it'll be very interesting to see her comply with those subpoenas, and many Democrats agreeing. Then you look at the Democrats in the legislature who are rebelling against Whitmer, voting against her priorities like banning cell phones in the classroom, even if it hurts kids, and also voting, refusing to cooperate with her request that we do a roads plan alongside the budget. So they're a very divided party, and it's very interesting to watch Dana Nessel suddenly become principled after Gretchen Whitmer starts cooperating with Donald Trump. Very interesting. I know a lot of people are very interested about that. So,
Question though, do you think the MEDC funding should be paused?
well, I think number one, Dana Nessel is doing this because Gretchen Whitmer has embraced Donald Trump. Okay, and this is a reflection of the fighting in the Democrat Party. I will say that, like, one of the things that we're trying to do in the budget is, you know, it is commonplace for departments to squirrel away money and say it can't be clawed back. That's pretty commonplace across government. And in this case, where you have specific earmarks that are not being spent well, and we know they're not being spent well, and then for some reason you can't stop it, we want to put an end to that. Do you know what I mean? And we wanted to put an end to that last budget, and Joe Tate refused. And you know, some people read some stories and they think maybe that was why, right? We read some stories in the Detroit News, but when I look at it, you know, we've always believed that we need to have a mechanism to stop whether it's a department that's spending money that they shouldn't, or they're holding on to money and not spending it, or whether it's one of these earmarks where we learn there's problems. We need mechanisms to really claw it back. And I would say that goes with these big corporate giveaways too. I mean, Democrats give, like, for example, GM, right? They gave GM $666 million to build 2 electric battery plants, and what happened? One, they sold to a Korean company, LG. They kept the money. The other, they're not even building an EV plant. They're going to build Tahoes and big trucks, but they get to keep the money. That should be clawed back too, right? So, I mean, we need to do that in a lot of places. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Beth.
So even with the income tax out of the picture, you still need $3 billion for roads. How do you find that in the budget without making cuts to schools or Medicaid or other kind of vital areas of the budget?
Yeah, and I've put this out publicly, and it's very similar, right? We need to stop most of the pork projects for politicians, okay? And this is an area where the governor and I agree. She has said that she thinks there should be a cap on the number of earmarks for politicians, and we agree on that. And the cap that I've put out is $100 million. Now, that's a very generous cap, but under Whitmer, it averages $600 million a year, and many years it's billions, okay? So we're saying let's cap it at $100 million, and let's make it public, and let's focus. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Now you're not coming up here, Ann. You're staying over there, hopefully. But you want to come up? You want to come up? You can come up if you want. You don't have to. You see Ann's here? All right. You can stand. Well, you want to stand with me? You can see. Ann surprised me. You couldn't watch it on House TV, could you?
No, I couldn't. I had to come in.
They asked me a tough question about the budget, so I'm going to turn it to you. I'm just kidding. So, no, Ann and I, haven't we? All day we've been going over numbers, haven't we?
All day.
We're doing a great job, and so.
It's not the first day we've spent doing this.
Oh, yeah.
We've been working
No.
hard.
But anyway, we've been working very hard on that budget, and what we find is all the pork projects. And you know what they do, by the way? They create pork projects for operations, and then they just put it in every year as a pork project. They're expanding government through the earmarks. They just expect that they're going to get it forever. That's not what these things are intended for. What these things are intended for are, for example, in a weaponized government, if this Democrat administration won't put a bridge somewhere because they're a Republican, there needs to be a mechanism, you know, to straighten that out and ensure that a bridge that is needed goes into place. And not all of these departments have very good judgment, right? And so we need a process for legislators to come in and do what the people elected them to do. But that should be limited to areas like a bridge or an important fire hall or something that is really has a public benefit. It should be disclosed, and it should be something that can be vetted through a hearing, not after the election, which is what Lansing insider Sarah Anthony wants. Then we get rid of all these giveaways. I mean, you look, we've shown how we can do it. Let's stop these big giveaways to GM and Ford and Goshen, all of them, right? And we can get really far along in that process by getting rid of the giveaways of the big corporations, by getting rid of the pork projects for politicians, and then something that is very hard for legislative Democrats. It's called setting priorities. You look at these departments, and I've talked about the Arts Council, which is a lot of waste. So when you talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, it is rampant all over government. And we want to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse and spend it on roads. And I know, Ann Bolin and Matt Maddock have been doing a great job of identifying waste, fraud, and abuse, and then eliminating it in our budget. And so whether it's the Arts Council or some of these economic development programs through the MEDC, that's how we intend to fix the roads. And you're going to see all the numbers very soon, but they're going to be real numbers, unlike the Democrats and their fake numbers, very fake numbers.
In the Medicaid for schools?
Well, we've put our school budget out there, so you've seen our school budget and our.
And changes to that budget?
Correct. Yeah, we put out our K through 12 budget. We put out our full school aid plan. And what we did is we put more money into education than they've ever received before, but we've given them the flexibility to decide how to spend a lot of it at their discretion. And that won't change. So the school budget, from our perspective, is our position.
That's not in the K through 12 budget.
Thank you for that, Elena. I'll continue with my answer. So you asked me if we were going to change schools or if we were going to change. Right. So I stand corrected, Elena. So I don't know, maybe Elena should follow the discussion. But anyway, to answer your question, the schools, we're not changing our school budget, and we're going to negotiate a school budget that is record funding for schools, but we're going to give them more flexibility than what they have now, okay? The second piece is you talked about schools, and then the second one, Medicaid. We're looking at Medicaid. I think you'll see a Medicaid budget that's probably bigger than the one last year, but we'll see. You look at it, right, the Medicaid claims have gone up considerably, and that's why using real numbers is important. So when we looked at the real Medicaid claims data, that added about $2 billion to the budget. And the Democrats are not accounting for that in their January budget. So when you see our budget, it's going to be based on the real numbers, which means Medicaid is higher. And when I talk about an unbalanced budget, that's why, right? Because when that Medicaid claims data came in, it was much higher, and Democrats don't account for that, and that's why their political economist, David Zinn, said they're so far out of whack on their Senate budget. So, we'll look at it. I think, we have some, you look at like I said, you look at the services you're providing, and you evaluate, are all these services the same as what you would get, like if you had a job? Are there some where they're better? And in some cases, Medicaid provides some services that are better than what you would do if you had a job. So we can look at that and say, hey, maybe there's some adjustments here. But overall, it's not going to be a huge cut or hit to Medicaid. And I actually think it'll actually be a little more than last year. And I've said What, I've said 30%. I saw a slide today in the Senate committee that says it's actually like 36% of the state budget is Medicaid. We welcome President Trump's request for work requirements in the new law. States like Michigan are going to have to put in work requirements. You're either going to have to work, volunteer your time, or seek education. And that's going to help us as we move ahead kind of get this Medicaid budget under control, because it keeps going up, up, up. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if this became more than half the state budget over time, right? So we really have to make sure we preserve it for the people that need it, and that's what the One Big Beautiful Bill does. But most of the changes are not taking effect right away. And then I would just say that a lot of the impacts that you hear from Democrats are overstated and can be solved with very minor policy changes at the state level. And by the way, we'll still get all of the federal funding that we get now on the, they call it the IPA, with very minor policy changes. Was there a question back here? Yeah, you have an answer.
Yes, with school starting back up within the next week for many school districts, parents and school districts both are asking the big question about school lunches right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a message to parents, what would that be?
Yeah, because of legislative Democrats, the school lunch program is in a situation where some districts are not ready to commit to it yet. But what I would say is that in the House Republican plan, we give the school districts more money than they've ever had before. And they have the flexibility to choose to do free breakfast, free lunch, and free dinner if they want. They can have free snacks. They can afford it all. But they're going to get to make those decisions. What Democrats are trying to do is they're trying to do a budget that keeps everything the same as it's always been and maybe tax 3% on the top, puts all kinds of regulations on our school districts, and doesn't empower our local districts to make the decision for themselves about how they're going to spend the money. And what you're going to see if you empower those local districts instead of having Lansing politicians regulating them, you're going to get better education performance in the classrooms. Yeah.
What's your plan for breaking this impasse with Senate Democrats?
Well, I think it's worked. I mean, they caved. You saw Winnie Brinks move some bills today, some Republican bills, and so I think it's been broken. I think there is no impasse anymore. We've passed 150 bills, I think, and they're starting to move them. And really, there never would have been a gridlock if the Senate Democrats would just move our bills, and they're starting to do it, and so I think that's a great thing.
Budget, they're saying that you're still in the way of getting a budget done. That's something.
Well, they don't have a realistic budget. They're billions of dollars out of balance, so they could pass a realistic budget and show it to us, or they could put a roads plan on the table, something that Governor Whitmer has asked them to do, and also has said there will be no budget without a roads plan. So, you know, there's additional work needed on their part. Put together a real budget based on the new realities that you could actually negotiate off of. Come up with a plan for transparency for earmarks, and then show us your roads plan. And then we'll get to the table and we'll negotiate. And then if they will empower their leader, Governor Whitmer, we'll get a budget done very fast, probably 2 weeks, because she knows how to make a deal, and so do I.
Getting them to that point where they'll come into the table with a roads plan like you're asking.
Well, I think ultimately they will follow their leader, Governor Whitmer. And so, you know, I think that what I've done is I've put together a very unified Republican Party along with Eric Nesbitt. We're a very unified Republican Party. We often come to these negotiations very unified. And ultimately, I believe Governor Whitmer will bring the legislative Democrats across the line kicking and screaming. But I think she'll get it done because she's proven that she knows how to get things done. So I think she'll do it. Yeah.
Speaker, one of the common themes that Senate Democrats have said in some of the press conferences about this is that you are standing in the way of chairs from working that is consolidated on review, and that So I just want to ask both of you right now, is that true? And do you feel like he's standing in your way against communications?
Do you want to say anything about it?
I wanted to say about this in a few words. No, the speaker is not standing in my way. We are in step with what we're trying to accomplish with this budget. And I would say that our subcommittee chairs have had more autonomy and more input in this budget process than in years past. As far as my counterpart in the Senate, I do regularly communicate with Senator Anthony and also talk to the budget director. The speaker's talking on a different level with Senator Brinks, or attempting to, and with the governor. And, you know, we're all trying to do our work, all right? And people don't like our new process. They maybe don't like our timeline, but I will tell you it is going to be realistic. It's reestablishing priorities, and it's going to be good value for the taxpayers. We're able to fix the roads. We're able to put forth sound education dollars without raising taxes, making sure with the Medicaid we have a lot to incorporate. There's a lot of good stuff in the One Big Beautiful Bill that the state will have good results from. And the Medicaid, yeah, it is a big one, but I have no doubt that we can put forth a very, very good budget that is realistic, and we're not leaving people behind. And I hope that the Senate can join us in that effort and get it done soon.
Yeah, and I would just say the Democrats, this is why the Democrat Party lost. They're more focused on their hatred of Donald Trump and more focused on their hatred of me than getting things done for the people of Michigan. And you saw they sued me, and they sued the House, and I was Speaker for 8 days. And if you want to go back to why there's so many problems and gridlock, that's where it starts. So they would rather create a narrative that the other Republicans are not agreeing to what we campaigned on. So when we campaigned on, we talked about all these things in the Mission for Michigan. Democrats would rather attack me than accept the reality that they have to contend with an entire Republican unified legislative caucuses that agree with me on this and that are going to work together with me to ensure that we get a better budget deal that sets priorities and gets better value for the tax dollars. It's like the Democrats' heads are exploding when you try to explain to them, we're not going to do the same thing that you guys have always done up here and just tack on 4%. We're going to look at these budgets, we're going to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse, and we're going to get value for your tax dollars.
Speaker, could you expand on your comment that you made earlier that the impasse is over? The Senate passed 5 House bills today.
Yeah, and so I would expect them to continue to pass House bills, and I give them credit for that because we're sending them stuff that's ready to go. I mean, you look at our education plan that we put forward that focuses on real life skills. These bills got 90 votes, 100 votes in the House. These are ready to go. There's so many bills ready to go. And so I'm happy to see the Senate is finally moving them. And so as far as I'm concerned, I mean, it's over. They're moving our bills, which is what they should have done all along.
Are you going to move their bills then?
I don't know why I would move their bills. I mean, they could move our bills, and they're doing it. So we're moving the bills that are ready to go, and none of their bills are ready to go. So we're taking bills from the House, from our members, and we're moving those bills, and then they're moving them through the Senate. And I think that's a really positive thing. They should be moving them, because when we send them the bills, they're ready to go. And they're bipartisan.
Move theirs though.
I don't understand your question. I mean,
The question
we're
is if
saying,
they're moving, if
yeah,
they're
their
moving
bills
your
are
bills,
not
are you
ready
going to
to
move
go,
their
so
bills?
we're not moving their bills. But they're moving our bills, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, they're caving, right? They're backing down to the pressure. And I'll tell you why they're backing down, Kyle. It's because of all the criticism they received on the cell phone bill. I mean, I just point this out to you. There was a Senate bill that was ready to go, and it was the one that we had negotiated with Polhanke. And there was a deal, and we offered to put Tisdale's bill up and then Polhanke's bill, and the Democrats tanked it after there was a deal. So that bill was ready to go, we moved it. But these other bills, as far as I've seen, are not ready to go, so we're not moving them. But the House bills are ready to go, and that's why they're moving them. But the fact that Democrats were blocking the bills, saying they were not ready to go when they were, was just another political game. So I'm happy they're finally moving the bills, like they should. Yeah, back here, a guy from the Midwestern. He only asked one question. You got two, so.
What are your thoughts on the secret payout that has been had, and then also if the employee of the Secretary of State should be released from any non-disclosure agreements or anything, like should people be able to hear what was really going on with that payout that's happening?
Absolutely. I mean, these are taxpayer dollars. If we're doing these big payouts to people and there was some problem, I mean, whistleblowers should be protected. I think everybody can agree to that. And this just seems like an effort to kind of squash somebody from, telling the truth. But eventually it will come out. When you do the wrong thing, you're never right.
Yeah, Ben.
To piggyback off of Kyle's first part of the question, you're moving policy makers. They're moving your policy makers. How does that relate to the impasse of the Senate? Does that give you hope that is breaking? But I guess that doesn't really speak to the budget impasse. I mean, they might be moving policy stuff. So how can you say that the impasse of the budget issues?
Well, I think that what would break that impasse is for them to put a roads plan on the table, because Governor Whitmer has said there's no budget without a roads plan. Many of these Democrat elected officials in cities and counties are saying, we're supporting the Republican plan, and there is no Democrat plan, and they're challenging Democrats to put a plan on the table. So I would say that the biggest thing that would break the logjam is a Senate Democrat roads plan. So if you go back to the sick leave and tip credit, which I see is kind of playing out again here, okay? You saw Republicans with a plan on the table. You saw Governor Whitmer open-minded to that plan, okay? Then you saw a whole bunch of drama, right? You saw, yeah, we had to do the walk-off. We had to do a lot of things when Democrats refused to negotiate, okay? Then what happened? Democrats put a plan on the table. We negotiated a deal. We got it done by the deadline, okay? So why is it that Senate Democrats haven't learned from this? I don't know, but we're in the same situation. Governor Whitmer wants to do it. I want to do it. Senate Democrats won't put a plan on the table. Soon, they probably will put a plan on the table, then we'll negotiate a deal. But they won't put a plan on the table. And so they're not showing their cards. They're not being transparent. And the way I see it is that roads, the governor and I agree on this, we have to have a roads deal as part of a budget. So we've put a school plan out there. There's no reason we couldn't have got it done by July 1, but that didn't happen because the Democrats walked away. Now we're working, we want a roads deal, and we want to set priorities in this budget, something that Democrats have never done under Whitmer. So I think that would be helpful with the budget. But beyond that, I think that Governor Whitmer will get them to the table and kicking and screaming, but they'll come and they'll empower her and we'll get a deal, because I think Governor Whitmer and I could do a deal in 2 weeks, and I think it'd be very easy. It's just these legislative Democrats that are rebelling against her, whether it's by issuing subpoenas against her staff, voting against her priorities, investigating her administration because she's working with Trump, or this stuff.
So that's another aspect of the impasse that you see, is that Whitmer will be the one to break some of that impasse.
Yeah, I think she will assert her leadership over the Democrat Party. It hasn't happened yet, but I think it will. And we've done that on the Republican side, where we're working together hand in hand with Senator Nesbitt and his caucus, which is fantastic. They're doing a great job, the Senate Republicans. And like I said, give them credit, right? They're not like Ranjit Puri. They didn't tank bills when the Democrats didn't have the votes. They helped them get them done. So give them credit for that. Anything? Yeah, go ahead.
Any progress in finding a new minority vice chair for appropriations?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at it. We're doing interviews. We really want a Democrat who's going to work with us, but also who's going to represent the Democrat Party well. There's a lot of Democrats that would work with us, and there's a lot of Democrats that might represent the Democrat Party well. We're looking for that Democrat who will work honor their word and represent the Democrat Party well. So we're doing some interviews on that, but we haven't quite made a decision yet.
Have you done in which candidates?
We've had a few. I mean, we've had a few, so, yeah. Go ahead, Beth.
When's the last time you talked to Winnie Briggs?
Well, I talked to Winnie Briggs quite a bit, so we've talked quite a bit.
They've been involved.
What's that?
She said today you haven't spoken to them.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot more than people think, so.
Is that true? Have you not talked to them?
Well, I don't want to contradict her statement, so I'll just say that I talk to her more than people think, so. And a lot more, the press likes to write stories and say I don't talk to her, but I actually talk to her quite a bit more than you think, so. But she might need cover with her caucus, so I'm not going to tell you.
Question. So are you implying that Nestle is investigating what they've been doing in retaliation for Whitmer showing support for Trump? Or not showing support, but...
I just am saying that we have the most political attorney general, I think, that we've ever seen. We have an attorney general that weaponizes government. I mean, she even threatened to put us in jail, if you remember, before she backtracked on that. You see her still going after people over the 2020 election, even though Donald Trump won in 2024. You saw her drag her political opponents through the Flint water situation and then screw that up, and I don't even think anyone got convicted, honestly. Everything got dismissed. You see her continuing, she'll go after Republican organizations, and then when similar things happen in Democrat organizations, she won't do anything. So I'll just point out that over the years, there have been a lot of things that Republicans have seen that we think that probably where the governor's administration should have been investigated. I just find it interesting that it's not until she started embracing Donald Trump that her office was raided through the MEDC by the Attorney General's office. I'm just making that observation. So.
Investigation started 6-7 months before Trump was elected.
Well, the office was raided in such a, you would say, adversarial manner after she started working with Trump. So I'm just making that observation, right? So, and it seemed like it was coordinated when certain people weren't in town. So I don't know. But, you know, whether it's for political reasons or other reasons, you know, we want to ensure that taxpayer dollars are utilized properly. But I would say that, you know, we really need an attorney general that is more even application of the law than what we've seen with this one, you know. So whether someone's supporting Trump or not shouldn't really factor into whether they're being investigated. It should really just be what is the right thing to do for the public and for the taxpayers, not whether they're working with Trump or supporting Trump. So, and you look at all of the lawsuits that she's entered into, I mean, most of the time without the support of the state of Michigan, wasting so much tax money on her political crusades, and really getting nowhere. I mean, look at line 5, right? That went nowhere, so we'll see. All right, well, thanks, everybody. Hopefully we got you some answers. And I just did want to point out what a great job MERS did this week, talking about these Democrat pundits. And you see these Democrat pundits, I'll just say you should read the story because they're all talking about how the House Republicans have been dominating the press and how the Democrats in the Senate have really been not advocating a clear message or making it clear what they stand for. So I give you credit on this. This is a very fair pundit story, and it's just interesting, no matter what the media does to try to cover for the Democrats, even the Democrat pundits, people that work for Verge Bonero, are saying that the Democrats in the Senate have lost. They have a lot of ground to make up at this point, and they're not even bothering to try. So very interesting stuff there in MERS, but thanks, everybody.